Every year, millions of people spend their hard-earned money chasing experiences that don't come close to matching the hype. These are 20 places in the USA that tourists regret visiting. Plymouth Rock. Every American child learns about Plymouth Rock in school. The story is simple. In 1620, the Pilgrims landed on a massive boulder on the shores of Massachusetts and began a new life in the New World. That story has drawn tourists to Plymouth for generations. The reality, however, has become one of the most well-documented letdowns in American travel history. What greets visitors today is a small, weathered rock sitting in a sandy pit, roughly the size of a coffee table. The original boulder is estimated to have weighed over 20,000 pounds. Over the centuries, it was broken apart during a failed move in 1774, chipped away by souvenir hunters, and split between multiple museums. What remains on display in Pilgrim Memorial State Park is believed to be roughly 1/3 of the original. Historians have also confirmed that the Pilgrims actually made their first landing in Provincetown, further up the Cape, weeks before reaching Plymouth. Even Plymouth's own tourism organization acknowledges the rock's reputation as one of the worst field trips in America. Visitors routinely describe spending less than 5 minutes at the site before wandering off, confused and underwhelmed. Locals joke that it should be called the Plymouth Pebble. The first documented claim that this rock was actually the Pilgrims' landing site came from a 94-year-old man named Thomas Faunce in 1741, 121 years after the Pilgrims arrived. For a legend built on a single eyewitness account made over a century after the fact, it has sold a lot of overpriced souvenirs. Roswell, New Mexico. Roswell, New Mexico has been marketing itself as the alien capital of the world since a mysterious crash at a nearby ranch in 1947 sparked decades of conspiracy theories. The U.S. government initially reported the recovery of a flying disc before quickly changing the story to a weather balloon. That contradiction was enough to put Roswell on the map permanently, and for decades, curious visitors have made the pilgrimage to this small desert city expecting to find something extraordinary. Most leave disappointed. The actual crash site, which many assume is the main attraction, is private land located roughly 75 miles outside of town. Visitors cannot access it. What Roswell itself offers is a main street lined with alien-themed gift shops, a UFO museum that draws around 220,000 visitors a year, and a handful of kitschy photo opportunities. The International UFO Museum and Research Center, which opened in 1992, presents the evidence around the 1947 incident without drawing firm conclusions, leaving many visitors feeling they paid to read a collection of newspaper clippings. TripAdvisor and travel forums are packed with reviews from people who drove hours through the New Mexico desert expecting something remarkable, only to find a small American town with green alien mannequins in store windows. One recurring complaint is how far removed the town is from the actual incident it built its identity around. If the appeal is the 1947 crash, Roswell has little to offer beyond the myth. For those hoping to see where it all went down, the answer is you can't. Four Corners Monument. The Four Corners Monument sits at the only point in the United States where 4 states, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, meet at a single spot. The idea of standing in 4 states at once has a certain novelty to it, and that novelty alone draws around 250,000 visitors a year to one of the most remote locations in the American Southwest. USA Today analyzed 23 million Google reviews of the world's top tourist attractions in 2023 and ranked Four Corners the single most overrated attraction in the United States. The monument itself is a granite disc embedded in a concrete slab, surrounded by a ring of souvenir stands and food vendors. Admission costs $8 per person. The drive to reach it is long. The nearest gas station is 6 miles away, and once you arrive, most visitors are done in under 10 minutes. The experience consists of crouching over the marker, taking a photo with one limb in each state, and leaving. There's nothing else to see or do at the site itself, and the surrounding landscape, while rugged and scenic, offers little for visitors who have not planned additional activities in the area. Of the nearly 11,000 Google reviews analyzed by USA Today, 139 specifically used the phrase tourist trap to describe Four Corners. That is a higher rate than almost any other attraction in the country. The Navajo Nation manages the site, and the revenue supports tribal communities, which is a genuinely good reason to visit. But anyone expecting a meaningful experience beyond the photo opportunity is likely to leave questioning whether the drive was worth it. South of the border. Driving south on Interstate 95 through the Carolinas, it is nearly impossible to miss south of the border. Over 250 billboards, spanning from New Jersey all the way to Florida, announce its arrival with puns and cartoon images of its mascot, a mustachioed Mexican caricature named Pedro. By the time drivers reach the actual complex just below the North Carolina border in Dillon, South Carolina, they have been promised a one-of-a-kind destination. What awaits is something considerably less impressive. South of the border opened in 1949 as a roadside beer stand and gradually expanded to cover over 350 acres. At its peak in the 1960s, it operated as a self-contained roadside town, complete with a post office, gas station, barber shop, and dozens of attractions. Today, many of those attractions are closed or in visible decline. Visitors frequently describe arriving to find shuttered storefronts, near empty parking lots, and a handful of open gift shops selling generic souvenirs. The food options run to chili dogs and corn dogs served cafeteria style. The famous Sombrero Tower, a 97-foot structure that once offered observation deck views, has had limited availability in recent years. The complex has also attracted criticism for decades over the Pedro mascot, whose billboard language historically relied on stereotypes and exaggerated Spanish accents. The Mexican embassy wrote a formal letter of complaint in 1993, and many of the more offensive billboards were eventually edited. The mascot itself remains. South of the border still draws visitors purely on the strength of 250 miles of roadside advertising, but those who stop expecting a genuine attraction rather than a faded roadside curiosity almost always leave underwhelmed. Waikiki Beach. Hawaii carries one of the most powerful reputations in American travel. For millions of visitors, it represents the ultimate escape: clear water, volcanic landscapes, and a culture unlike anything on the mainland. Waikiki Beach on the island of Oahu is the most iconic entry point into that fantasy and the most consistently disappointing. In a global study by software company Cloudwards that analyzed TripAdvisor reviews across 200 of the world's most popular beaches, Waikiki received a perfect score of 100 out of 100 on the complaint index. No other beach on the list came close. The primary complaint, accounting for 67.3% of all negative reviews, is overcrowding. Waikiki Beach is a narrow strip of sand fronting a wall of high-rise hotels in central Honolulu. And at peak times it becomes so packed that finding a spot to sit requires planning. Parking can take over an hour. Prices in the surrounding area are significantly higher than the rest of the island. Visitors accustomed to the beaches shown in Hawaiian tourism photography are frequently caught off guard by how urban and commercialized the experience actually is. The beach is a 1.5-mile stretch divided into 8 distinct sections, and some areas are better than others. But the overwhelming consensus from first-time visitors is that the real Hawaii, the lush coastlines, uncrowded beaches, and authentic local culture, is found well outside Waikiki. The north shore of Oahu alone offers a completely different experience. Waikiki is not a bad place by most standards, but it sets a specific expectation and consistently fails to meet it, which is exactly how it earned its ranking as the world's most complained about beach. Graceland. Elvis Presley's Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee is one of the most visited private homes in the United States, drawing around 600,000 visitors a year. For fans of the King of Rock and Roll, it holds genuine emotional weight. For everyone else, it has become one of the most documented tourist traps in the country. In a global study by travel company QR Code Generator that analyzed TripAdvisor reviews for overrated attractions worldwide, Graceland ranked 7th. A separate analysis by financial platform Nomad named it the most expensive tourist trap globally, factoring in ticket costs and the volume of negative reviews. General admission to Graceland starts at around $40 per person, with higher-tier packages pushing well past $80. The basic ticket covers a self-guided tour of the mansion via iPad and earphones, which visitors can also upgrade to include the 2 aircraft Elvis owned, a car museum, and additional exhibits. Many reviewers report feeling that the house itself, which includes Elvis's famous jungle room, a mirrored den, and the meditation garden where he's buried, takes roughly 2 hours to see, making the price feel steep for what is ultimately a preserved 1970s home. Consistent complaints include long wait times for the shuttle bus that crosses the road to the mansion, the heavily managed nature of the tour, and the sense that the experience presents a carefully curated version of Elvis rather than a complete picture. Visitors who are not already devoted Elvis fans tend to leave feeling that Graceland functions more as a merchandise operation than a museum. The gift shops, restaurants, and ticketing operation give the complex a theme park quality that many find at odds with the historical significance of the location. Salem, Massachusetts. Salem, Massachusetts is permanently associated with the witch trials of 1692, when 19 people were hanged and hundreds more were accused following a wave of mass hysteria in the Puritan community. It is a real and sobering chapter in American history, and Salem's museums and historic sites could do the story justice. The problem is that the commercial machinery built around that history has overwhelmed it. In a 2023 USA Today study of the world's most overrated tourist attractions, drawn from 23.2 million Google reviews, the Salem Witch Museum ranked second globally, behind only Four Corners Monument. The Salem Witch Museum, which opened in 1972 in a converted church, remains the town's primary draw. Its main presentation recreates the 1692 hysteria through life-size stage sets and narration. Visitors are ushered through in groups every 30 minutes. Many reviewers describe the experience as outdated, rushed, and underwhelming for the admission price. Beyond the museum, Salem's streets are lined with ghost tour operators, Harry Potter-adjacent shops, Frankenstein exhibits, and witch-themed merchandise. Locals from nearby towns have noted that the actual history of Salem is increasingly difficult to find beneath the commercial Halloween aesthetic that has taken over year-round. October is the worst of it. Over 1 million people visit Salem in October alone, creating gridlock, parking chaos, and an atmosphere that feels less like historical reflection and more like a Halloween theme park. The city literally asked visitors not to drive downtown in 2022 due to the volume of traffic. Residents have charged up to $60 per day for driveway parking. The real Salem witch trials began in Danvers, then called Salem Village, a few miles away. The town now known as Salem was where the court hearings took place, but the community most connected to the events is a different place entirely. Visitors rarely know that before they arrive. Original Starbucks, Seattle. At 1912, Pike Place in Seattle sits what millions of tourists believe to be the original Starbucks, the very spot where the world's largest coffee chain began. The lines outside can stretch around the block with waits of an hour or more on busy days. What most visitors do not know until they are already in line is that this is not actually the original location. The true first Starbucks opened in 1971, 262 feet away on the corner of Western Avenue and Pike Place. The store at 1912 Pike Place is the second location, opened later. Thousands of tourists walk past the actual original every day on their way to queue at the wrong building. In the 2023 USA Today Global Tourist Trap ranking, the Pike Place Starbucks was specifically called out as one of the most overrated attractions in Washington state. The experience inside the store is identical to any of the more than 35,000 Starbucks locations worldwide. The same menu, the same coffee, the same cups. The only difference is the line, the crowds, and a selection of location-specific merchandise available for purchase. Multiple travel writers and locals have noted that there are far superior independent coffee shops within walking distance of Pike Place that serve better coffee with no wait. Pike Place Market itself is a different matter. It is a genuine, functioning public market that has operated since 1907 and is widely praised as one of Seattle's authentic experiences. The Starbucks, however, is the single most complained about element of the market. Visitors who queue for an hour to drink the same coffee available on every street corner in America consistently describe the experience as one of their bigger travel regrets. Grand Canyon Skywalk. The Grand Canyon is one of the genuine wonders of the natural world. 277 miles long, up to 18 miles wide, and over a mile deep. It is visually overwhelming in the way that few natural places on Earth manage to be. The Grand Canyon Skywalk, however, is not the Grand Canyon National Park. It is a glass-bottomed, horseshoe-shaped walkway built on the west rim of the canyon on Hualapai tribal land, roughly 270 miles from the south rim that most people picture when they think of the Grand Canyon. The difference matters enormously, and many visitors only discover it after they have already paid. Admission to the Skywalk is $99 per person as of 2026, with taxes and fees bringing the per-person cost to around $114. That price covers access to the Skywalk, shuttle transport between the limited viewing areas, and nothing else. Personal photography was historically banned on the walkway, with expensive photo packages sold separately, though this rule has since been updated. The viewing area is restricted to 2 stops. The facility is located hours from the nearest major city across poorly maintained roads, and the experience is reported to take under 2 hours for most visitors. A family of 4 can easily spend over $400 before food or parking. The south rim of the Grand Canyon, which is inside the national park and offers views widely considered far superior to the west rim, costs $35 per vehicle to enter and includes access to dozens of viewpoints, hiking trails, and visitor facilities. The Skywalk's appeal is built almost entirely on novelty, the glass floor, the dramatic drop below. For many visitors, that novelty wears off within minutes of arriving. Review after review describes the Skywalk as the most expensive 10 minutes of a holiday. SeaWorld Orlando. SeaWorld Orlando opened in 1973 and for decades operated as one of the anchor attractions of Florida's theme park corridor. Killer whale shows, marine exhibits, and the promise of up-close animal encounters made it a staple of family holidays. Then came the 2013 documentary Blackfish, which exposed the conditions in which orca whales were kept in captivity and the consequences for both the animals and their trainers. Public sentiment shifted sharply, attendance dropped, and SeaWorld eventually ended its orca breeding program in 2016 and phased out theatrical orca shows. What remains is a park in a difficult identity transition, trying to reinvent itself as a thrill ride destination while competing with Universal and Disney just down the road. The results have been mixed at best. Visitors frequently report that SeaWorld Orlando now feels like a smaller, less polished version of its competitors, with fewer rides, shorter operating hours, and a marine life component that no longer includes the shows that were once its primary draw. Admission prices have remained high, with standard tickets running between $80 and $110. Parking adds another $30. Food prices inside the park draw consistent complaints, and the overall value proposition compared to Universal Studios or Disney World, which cost similar amounts but offer significantly more, is a common frustration in reviews. Orlando was ranked the single most overrated tourist destination in the world in a radical storage analysis of over 820,000 TripAdvisor reviews, with nearly 20% of visitors leaving negative feedback. SeaWorld contributes meaningfully to that reputation. It is not a bad park in the way some tourist traps are, but in a city where the competition includes the wizarding world of Harry Potter and Disney's Magic Kingdom, being merely adequate is a significant problem. Space Needle. The Space Needle is Seattle's defining landmark, built as the centerpiece of the 1962 World's Fair and standing at 605 feet tall. It appears on postcards, in films, and in nearly every piece of Seattle promotional material ever produced. It is also, according to a FloridaRentals.com study that analyzed over 155,000 TripAdvisor reviews across 230 of America's top paid tourist attractions, the single biggest tourist trap in the United States. More than 4% of the Space Needle's reviews use terms like overpriced, overrated, or flat-out disappointing, a higher rate than any other attraction in the study. The core complaint is simple. For around $35 to $40 per person, visitors take a 41-second elevator ride to an observation deck at 520 feet and look at Seattle. The views are real and on a clear day include Puget Sound, Mount Rainier, and the city skyline. But Seattle is not a particularly tall city, and the surrounding buildings limit the dramatic effect. Most visitors spend between 20 and 45 minutes at the top before heading back down. For those who build a significant portion of their Seattle itinerary around the Space Needle, the experience rarely justifies the cost or the hype. The Space Needle underwent a renovation in 2018 that added a rotating glass floor called the Loop, designed to let visitors look straight down through the structure. The renovation improved the experience for many, but the core criticism remains consistent. The Skyview Observatory at Columbia Tower in downtown Seattle offers comparable or superior views from the tallest building on the West Coast for a fraction of the price. The Space Needle's value is almost entirely reputational. People go because they feel they have to, and many leave wondering why. Biltmore Estate. The Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina, is the largest private home ever built in the United States. Commissioned by George Vanderbilt in 1889 and completed 6 years later, the French Renaissance chateau covers 175,000 square feet across 250 rooms, 65 fireplaces, and 8,000 acres of grounds. It is a genuine feat of architecture and an extraordinary display of Gilded Age wealth. It is also, according to a 2023 USA Today analysis of 23.2 million Google reviews worldwide, one of the most overpriced tourist attractions on Earth, with the word expensive appearing in 653 of its 30,000 reviews. Standard admission to the Biltmore starts at around $80 per person and can climb well above $120 depending on the season, with holiday periods pushing prices even higher. Once inside, visitors follow a self-guided audio tour through the publicly accessible rooms, roughly 50 of the 250 total, at their own pace. The tour typically takes between 2 and 3 hours. Many reviewers note that after paying more than the cost of entry to the Palace of Versailles, 2 hours in a house with no live guides leaves them feeling shortchanged. Additional costs for wine tastings, restaurant meals, and access to certain areas of the estate add up quickly. The Biltmore is not without its defenders, and for those with a genuine interest in Gilded Age architecture, American history, or landscape design, the gardens were designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, the same man behind New York's Central Park. The estate delivers real value, but the visitor base is broad and expectations are high. Those who arrive expecting a full day of immersive historical experience and leave after 2 hours, feeling they saw only a sliver of a very expensive house, represent a significant and well-documented portion of the guest book. Kennedy Space Center. The Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex on Florida's Space Coast carries one of the most compelling promises in American tourism. This is where NASA launched the Apollo missions, where astronauts departed for the moon, and where the Space Shuttle program operated for 3 decades. The history embedded in the site is extraordinary. The experience of visiting it, however, has become one of the most debated questions in Florida travel. In a Jeff Betts study that analyzed low-star reviews from both TripAdvisor and Google for terms like disappointment, bad experience, and unenjoyable, Kennedy Space Center ranked as the most disappointing tourist attraction in the United States. The complaints center on a consistent set of issues: outdated exhibits that have not kept pace with modern museum standards, steep ticket prices starting at around $70 per person with an additional $15 parking fee, and a physical layout that visitors frequently describe as confusing and poorly organized. The site covers over 700 acres, and many visitors report not realizing until they arrive that shuttle bus tours to the launch facilities are separate from general admission and require additional time and planning. Families expecting a theme park-style interactive experience often find the majority of the complex consists of static displays and informational panels. The Kennedy Space Center does have genuine highlights. The Saturn V rocket on display is one of the most impressive objects in the country, and the Shuttle Atlantis exhibit receives consistent praise. But the overall experience is uneven, and for a family of 4 paying well over $200 before food, the value is a frequent source of complaint. NASA is entering a new era of space exploration with the Artemis program and ambitions for Mars missions. The visitor complex, critics argue, has not yet updated its storytelling to reflect where the agency is going rather than where it has been. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened in Cleveland, Ohio in 1995, and its location has been a point of debate ever since. The decision to build in Cleveland, rather than New York or Memphis, both of which lobbied hard for the honor, was a political compromise that still generates occasional controversy. The building itself, designed by I.M. Pei with its distinctive glass pyramid overlooking Lake Erie, is genuinely striking. What is inside has proven more divisive, and the institution has attracted sustained criticism both for the visitor experience and for its induction process. The museum covers 6 floors of exhibition space, totaling 55,000 square feet, and a thorough visit takes 3 hours or more. For music lovers with genuine depth of interest, it delivers. Costumes, instruments, original handwritten lyrics, and multimedia displays trace the history of rock from its roots in blues and gospel through decades of evolution. The induction hall itself is a significant draw. But for casual visitors or those who arrive without strong knowledge of or feeling for rock history, the sheer volume of content without enough narrative structure to guide them through it can feel exhausting and underwhelming. Interactive exhibits that are not working are a recurring complaint. Ticket prices run around $35 per person, and the museum is Cleveland's biggest tourist attraction, drawing visitors who have often made the trip specifically to see it. The hall has faced mounting criticism in recent years for its broadening definition of rock and roll, inducting artists from hip-hop, pop, and country that many purists argue have no connection to the genre. A 2026 Wall Street Journal column called for scrapping the institution entirely and rebranding it as the American Museum of Popular Music. Whether you agree or not, the debate itself reflects how much ground the hall has lost as a clear and coherent institution, and how often visitors leave feeling that the concept promised more than the museum delivered. Times Square. Times Square is the most visited tourist attraction in the United States, drawing around 50 million people a year through its 13-block stretch of Midtown Manhattan. It is where the ball drops on New Year's Eve, where Broadway meets commerce, and where New York City's most recognizable image is generated. It is also, according to a global survey by language platform Preply, that analyzed reviews across 81 of the world's most iconic locations, the single most overrated tourist trap on Earth. Of all the sites studied worldwide, Times Square produced the highest volume of negative responses, 1,761 reviews, specifically calling it overrated, underwhelming, or a tourist trap. The complaints are not hard to understand. Times Square is loud, congested, and aggressively commercial. Costumed characters dressed as Elmo, Spider-Man, and various superheroes solicit tips from tourists, with encounters that can turn confrontational. Street vendors crowd the sidewalks. The restaurants in the immediate area are almost universally chain establishments charging inflated prices. The billboards and LED lighting that look spectacular in photographs create a sensory experience on the ground that many visitors find overwhelming rather than exciting. Crime complaints in the area have drawn attention in recent years, and the neighborhood's cleanliness is a persistent issue in reviews. What most visitors who leave disappointed had in common is an expectation built by decades of film, television, and advertising. Times Square on screen is glamorous and cinematic. Times Square in person is a place where 50 million people a year move through a narrow corridor of concrete being sold things. New Yorkers themselves rarely go there. Local guides consistently point visitors toward Greenwich Village, the High Line, or almost any other part of the city as a better use of their time. Times Square is worth seeing once, in the sense that almost anything famous is worth seeing once. Most people who have seen it once report having no desire to return. Niagara Falls, U.S. side. Niagara Falls is real. The waterfalls are extraordinary. Over 6 million cubic feet of water pour over the falls every minute, and the sound and scale are genuinely unlike anything most visitors have experienced. The problem is not the falls themselves. The problem is that tourists who visit from the American side in New York State receive what is widely considered the inferior view, while the dramatically better vantage point sits across the border in Ontario, Canada. Countless travel writers, guides, and reviewers have made this point for decades, yet millions of visitors continue to base their Niagara trip on the U.S. side and leave feeling they missed something. The American Falls and Bridal Veil Falls are accessible from the New York State Park, and visitors can get extremely close to the water. In some cases, close enough to feel the spray at the base of the falls. What the American side lacks is the panoramic view of Horseshoe Falls, the largest and most powerful of the three Cascades. That view is best experienced from the Canadian side, specifically from Queen Victoria Park in Ontario, where the full sweep of the falls is visible. The Canadian side also offers significantly more in the way of dining, accommodation, entertainment, and additional attractions along the waterfront. The town of Niagara Falls, New York, which surrounds the American State Park, adds to the disappointment for many visitors. It has long been described as rundown and lacking the infrastructure to complement a major tourist destination. Visitors who cross the Rainbow Bridge into Ontario frequently describe an immediate and jarring contrast in the quality and character of the surrounding area. The falls themselves demand to be seen, but tourists who make the trip without understanding the difference between the two sides consistently leave having spent money on an experience that was, at best, half of what was available to them. Fisherman's Wharf / Pier 39. San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf was once exactly what its name suggests, a working waterfront where fishing boats brought in daily catches and the seafood was as fresh as anywhere on the Pacific coast. The docks began declining in the 1960s, and tourist development gradually replaced the fishing industry. Today, Fisherman's Wharf and the adjacent Pier 39 shopping complex occupy what multiple studies have identified as the single most complained about tourist attraction in the world. In back-to-back annual rankings by travel eSIM provider Nomad, Fisherman's Wharf received more explicit tourist trap mentions in its reviews than any other attraction globally, ahead of Las Ramblas in Barcelona and Temple Bar in Dublin. Pier 39 is a two-level mall of over 50 shops and restaurants built on a historic pier. And the dining options are predominantly chain restaurants or seafood establishments charging significant premiums for views of the bay. A bowl of clam chowder and a sourdough bread bowl, the area's signature dish, can cost between $15 and $25 at most establishments. The souvenir shops sell items that differ little from those available in any tourist district in any American city. The sea lions that colonized the floating docks near Pier 39 after the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake are, by near universal agreement, the genuine highlight of the area, and they are free to watch. San Francisco is a city with extraordinary food, architecture, and culture, most of which exists far from the Wharf. Locals are notorious for avoiding the area entirely, describing it to visiting friends as a place to cross off a list quickly before moving on. The ferry to Alcatraz departs from Pier 33 near the Wharf, and Alcatraz itself is consistently rated as a worthwhile and genuinely compelling experience. But the Wharf is a destination in its own right, built on the idea of an authentic San Francisco waterfront, has been replaced by something its own residents consider a hollow imitation of the city they actually live in. Hollywood Boulevard. Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles carries the most powerful entertainment mythology of any street in the world. The Walk of Fame, with its brass stars embedded in terrazzo, stretches for 1.3 miles along the boulevard and Vine Street. The TCL Chinese Theater, where celebrities have pressed their handprints into cement since 1927, sits at its center. Millions of visitors arrive every year carrying an expectation shaped by Oscar broadcasts, movie premieres, and a century of cinematic mythology. In a November 2025 global analysis by luggage storage company Stasher that evaluated 101 of the world's most famous attractions across Google reviews, TikTok data, safety rankings, and airport accessibility, Hollywood Boulevard's Walk of Fame ranked dead last. Out of 101 attractions worldwide, it finished 101st. The gap between expectation and reality on Hollywood Boulevard is as wide as any in American tourism. The Walk of Fame's Google rating of 4.0 is the lowest of any attraction in the Stasher study. TripAdvisor places it at 3.4 out of 5. The stars themselves are embedded in grimy sidewalks, shared with aggressive street performers in low-quality costumes who demand payment for photos. Vendors crowd the pavement. The surrounding businesses cater almost exclusively to tourists, with pricing that reflects the captive nature of the foot traffic. Multiple reviews describe the area as feeling unsafe, and crime complaints in the immediate vicinity of the Walk of Fame have been a persistent issue. The more than 2,700 stars on the Walk of Fame do represent a real and extensive record of Hollywood history. The TCL Chinese Theater's forecourt is genuinely worth 5 minutes. But the broader experience of spending time on Hollywood Boulevard is one that consistently fails to match the image that attracted visitors in the first place. Los Angeles is a city with remarkable food, coastline, architecture, and cultural institutions, almost none of which are located on Hollywood Boulevard. The street that made Los Angeles famous to the world is, for most of the people who travel to see it, the biggest disappointment the city has to offer. The places most aggressively sold to the public are often the ones least worth your time and money. The gap between the America that gets marketed and the America that actually delivers is worth knowing before you book the flights. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more beyond belief facts, click on the video appearing on your screen now and remember to hit the subscribe button.